Hello and welcome to Newsnight, where we take newsmakers up on the national and international issues of the day. I'm Ladi Akiridoluale. Thanks for being with us. Rather than show signs of abating and releasing its seeming stranglehold on national consciousness, the COVID-19 pandemic seems to be digging in its heels. Why is this so? My guest today says the arrival of vaccines in Nigeria will not mean an end to the problem, and that the non-compliance as well as non-challenge to protocols for COVID-19 means Nigeria will be battling with the pandemic for quite a while unless there is a change. Newsnight talks to foremost virologist and former president of the Nigerian Academy of Science, Professor Oyewale Tomori. Professor Tomori, thank you for your time. Welcome to the program.
It's my pleasure.
Let us start from our case management, and I'm talking about the COVID-19. Just a couple of hours to this interview, the Lagos State Commissioner for Health announced that in Lagos, which for much of last year had been the epicenter of COVID-19 in the country, more than 4,000 people are receiving home treatment even now. Do you think we have done our best in terms of the case management for COVID-19 since it arrived in Nigeria in February of 2020?
In general, I think we've done well. Of course, I mean, you could always do better. But when you look at the number of deaths, I think we've done quite well. Although that is also qualified because we don't know exactly how many people actually end up in the hospital who have the disease. How many people decide to do home treatment without coming in? So our figures, both the number of cases and also the number of deaths, could be suspect. But when you look at the case fatality rate, we're not worse off than many African countries. I think Nigeria is about 2% now, if I remember the exact. It keeps changing, of course. But on the African average, we are a little below the African average. So in a way, we're not done that badly in terms of, and that we move on to the stage of home management. It's also an improvement because then you don't congest your hospitals. And I'm sure there are some real strict guidelines for which kind of homes can be involved in home care and home-based treatment.
Let me take you to the contentious and vexed issue of testing. Nigeria has had major challenge with testing. I'm happy you mentioned the African continent. If you take South Africa, which is the country with the highest caseload, but also the country with the highest level of testing, South Africa has tested over 10% of its population. Over 6 million of its people have been tested. But as we speak, Nigeria, with 206 million people, has tested just about 1 million, even as we speak. So does that hide in any way what we may really be dealing with, even if not officially?
In fact, you hit on a very important point. Let's look at the issue of testing and others. When you look at the disease spectrum, it's not just the lab results that tell you the number of people that are sick. There are people who are not showing symptoms, but who have the infection and who also transmit it to other people. The lab result we're getting is just a tip of the iceberg. Initially, when we started, there was only those who were sick or those who had contact with those who were sick that were testing. And that was the first error we made at the beginning. And the reason for that was that we didn't have enough reagents. Most of the reagents we had were donated by some other group. So you had to manage what you have effectively. And if you remember, there are not too many laboratories in the country at the initial stages. That itself is another story to tell. They're probably limited to the urban centers. And other things were happening. And when I mean urban centers, I'm talking of Lagos, Abuja, and maybe a few state capitals. Many states were not even testing. So what we're getting from our laboratory is just the minimum that you can get. It doesn't tell you, when you look at the whole spectrum of disease, you're looking at people who have the disease, those who are not showing symptoms. You also have those who are sick but will never come to the hospital. You have many others who are transmitting and showing all this type of thing. So if it's only those who are coming to the hospital who are showing signs that you're testing, then of course you are missing quite a lot of your people. And that's the pattern that we have had. Many of our labs, and the NCDC was building up our labs step by step, which itself is a disgrace. 60 years of our existence, we're just building laboratories up. That is, it's like the people say, you're making your ammunition at the war front. That is something wrong. The question is, were we like that before? We were not. We had labs in this country. What happened? We didn't sustain them. And each epidemic, we now start from scratch again. So in terms of testing, I mean, you mentioned South Africa, which has tested almost 10% of its people. One out of, even if we have made 1 million, which we have not yet made, 1 over 200, that's how much? 0.05% of our population. So we're nowhere. And that, of course, reflects on the number we're getting. I mean, all these 2 today, 5 tomorrow. It's also a measure of how many states are actually testing. How many states have the labs? Even where they have the labs, how many of them are testing? These are issues. If you look at the data from NCDC, you find some states have not reported cases for 50, 60 days. Not because they're not, but because they're not testing. So that's where our problem is.
Something else that we seem to be dealing with, but maybe is not really only Nigeria, but in the case of Nigeria, because this is where we are, it is really seems to be affecting what we're doing with COVID-19, is the issue of non-compliance as well as conspiracy theories. People talking about the fact that COVID-19 doesn't exist, it is a scam. Why aren't we picking dead bodies? Why can't they show us dead bodies of people who have died of COVID-19 and so on? And as a result of those theories, you have non-compliance, people not wearing masks, not doing social distancing. Every day you go out or you check online, you find people are still doing plenty of parties. They are still huddled together in public transport and all of that. So on that hand, where did we go wrong with the issue of information management and awareness, especially because this is something that doesn't seem to be going away?
Thank you very much for bringing up some of those issues. I think one of the problems, not just with us in Nigeria, but with Africa, is that we tend to believe what people from outside say. If they say an epidemic is going to wipe out Africa, we believe it without checking. When we started, they were telling us, oh, your test rate must be this level. But each of us, whether in Europe, America, China, we're learning about this disease. We're all novices at the beginning. But then, they quickly caught on and were able to do. But the advice they were given initially, I mean, WHO at one time had to keep changing its own advice based on the evidence that was available to it. And therefore, when people in the overseas said, oh, this virus was going to end up killing everybody in Africa, all that kind of thing, we believed. But then when it didn't happen, then we kept saying, oh, you see, it's not, therefore the disease doesn't exist, or Africa, we're too strong in Africa, we don't have that kind of thing. History, I mean, we were fooled by history. And by that I mean, there's a historical concept about the fact of Africa, that anything that comes is the worst in Africa. But we've seen evidence that that's not the situation. COVID has put history to a lie and has put all those who are believing on the past history of Africa to shame. Because right now, in fact, even some of our ministers, I had one of the ministers, not the Minister of Health, who was saying, oh, COVID is killing everybody in Europe. It's not killing everybody in Nigeria. Therefore, it is what our government are doing. That again is another falsehood. And another issue is the fact that we've had a situation in which we don't trust our government. I mean, you remember during the campaign, they'll tell us all sorts of things they're going to do. They get into office, they don't do it. So we never trusted them. And we too, let's be frank with ourselves, we also are lying to our government. A minister comes and makes a statement which you and I know that is a lie. And we start clapping innovation. That is a lie. We're telling him we agree with what he's saying, yet we know he's telling a lie. And yet we go on. So the government is lying to us, we are lying to the government. So we reach a situation where we don't believe anybody. And so when the government comes up and says, put on this, put on that, nobody believes the government. And you remember the point we were saying about data. Today, the CDC comes up with one figure. Another day, they come with this figure. And you remember, one of the things, we have never really sat down to do proper analysis of our data. Let me give you a good example. So today, January 3, they come up and say, we have 1,000 cases. But the question is, was it 1,000 cases today? Or were those samples collected like 2-3 weeks before, 10 days before? And therefore, if you say it is 1,000 today, those 1,000 were not positive today. Some of them were positive 10 days ago. Some of them were positive 2 weeks ago. And therefore, even the epidemiological we're giving to our country was false in itself. We are always behind the epidemic. And that's what is happening. Because if your test results are not coming quickly, then you have this problem about getting results and telling me that I'm positive today when your actual father was positive 10 days when you collected my sample. Without disaggregating all those figures, without sitting down to meticulous in our data analysis, then we have that problem. Let me also give an example. When you go out to the field, one of the things I learned when I was in school, in field epidemiology, is that whatever form you take to the field, do not leave a blank space. You must find, not available, zero, or whatever. You don't leave a blank space. And so many of the data we're getting, people are not meticulous, they're not careful. You go and you take sample from somebody, you don't ask for his age. You take sample from somebody, you don't ask for where did he go from the last time, all those kind of things. So when you bring your form, I can analyze your form to know when did this man get this infection. Sometimes they even miss out the name. Where is he, what's his address? So how do I contact trace? How do I find out where this is? And if my result comes out 2 weeks after you've collected my sample, how am I going to remember whom I stayed with 2 weeks ago? But if I got my result 2 days ago, 2 days after you took it, and you come to ask me, where were you yesterday? I can say, oh, I was in this place, or I was in that place. But 2 weeks after you give me the result, I don't remember where I was. Those are some of the problems we have in our data system. And it's been a major problem. It's not just now. It's that have been causing problem in Nigeria. If you don't get proper data, you get wrong information. And in fact, your deduction from the data is falsehood itself. So a lot of times, some of the things, the data we're getting from our government is almost like fake data. And fake data is the same thing as fake news. And these are some of the problems. And when you use your planning to control the disease based on that data, and that's why the problem we're having. People who don't believe our government, and we are quite a country, I may be surprised to say that, that we don't care too much about our own life as individuals. And I think when this problem of COVID came, the emphasis was placed on what the government is going to do, not on what you and I would do. Remember, this virus is totally immobile. When you talk and say you have a mobile phone, your phone is not mobile. You are the one making it mobile. So also, this is a virus that is immobile. It's me and you and other people that carry it around that make it to transmit into different places. Like I said, the COVID virus is an innocuous, protein, inert in itself, until it comes into me, and then I start taking it down. So when we address those issues about how to stop it, how to prevent it, then we can take the right action. Remember when the first case came in February 27, I think, we suggested to the government, we know where the source is. It is coming from outside, at least for now. Lock the gates. People say, oh, it has already come to the country. The cow has already escaped from the van. Therefore, why are you locking the gate? I say, I'm locking the gate because I don't want more cows to escape. My system is not strong enough, to contain excess of cases coming in. Therefore, when those cases came, many African countries made that same mistake. When the first or 2 cases came in, we should have locked our doors, at least for that, and then we'll have reduced. Go and check the figures from NCDC. 75% of the cases that came into the country, 1% of the cases that came into the country came from outside. It is from that 1% that you and I, we now have about 80,000 or one about cases we have. And when you look at that figure, you'll have 75% of that figure, we not knowing where we got them from. A country that has a good system will have been able to trace, contact tracing. We did that with Ebola, didn't we? So what happened to us? This is the problem. These are the things we are saying. We don't learn from past experience. We operate on lessons forgotten. And that's the problem we have in this country.
Now, there is, of course, there's the issue of what some call in some other countries. I don't know if it's applicable here. You had the first wave. And a lot of talking about lessons learned, a lot of countries learned lessons from that first wave so that when the second wave, what is called the second wave, hit, they were better prepared. Their hospitals were there, the treatment centers, the strategy, the money, and so on. Here, we couldn't even agree. In Nigeria, we couldn't even agree whether or not we had had a first wave and whether we were now going to have a second wave. Do you, Prof, believe that we are now experiencing a second wave, given all the numbers? That's one. And then two, is this being exacerbated by the whole issue of mutation, the virus now mutating and having variants which may be resistant to some of the treatments that have already been identified and used, possibly during the first wave, if you like?
If you have good, reliable data, you will know whether you have a first wave or a second wave. When you are not sure of your data, when you're not sure of how many states are testing, you remember we had this peak in July, I think, where we had the largest number, 790 cases.
Yes.
And then gradually it dropped. It dropped, and then for almost 4 months, we didn't seem to get anything. At that time, even the government was folding up the isolation wards because on the pretext that we're getting low numbers. But then, you know what happened to us? The first time we had a drop was during the Salah holidays. We did a little bit of analysis. 2 weeks before the Salah holidays, we tested more samples. During the week before the Salah holidays, we tested about 3-4 times more samples than we tested during the Salah week. And of course, naturally, if you're testing less, your numbers will drop. And then before government reacted to that, people already concluded that, no more COVID, no more COVID. It was almost a week later, the government said, oh, no, it's because there was Salah holiday, people were not testing. A government that is proactive, a committee that is proactive will have done all those analyses ahead of time and alert our people that, these numbers will go down. It's not because the case has gone down. You don't come 2 weeks after the people have believed that the thing has gone to say, oh, no, that going down was because we didn't test. I mean, this is where we don't believe our government. And this is some of the problems. We should have been more proactive. I asked one question. I don't know when they set up the PTF, one of the people I asked said, do you have a research subgroup? I mean, I'm not talking about people who will be sitting down and announcing on the radio. People who will sit down on a daily basis at night. In fact, the research group works at night. What I mean by that, when those results come, let's sit down. The thing I was talking about, disaggregating. They will have sat down overnight and say, okay, these samples, this was collected 10 days ago, this was collected 5 days ago, and then put those figures appropriately to the days in which they occur and adjust the curve as it is. This was the same group that did not know that the labs were not testing. When suddenly you have 18 labs testing, and then you end up with 8 lab testing consistently for 3 days, something is wrong somewhere. You should have alerted the people. That's what I meant by the research, background research team as analyzing on a daily basis, looking at what is happening and alerting is checking whether those labs have the diagnostic facilities, whether they have the kits to test. Why are we having no more cases? Why is the state not having any polio case? any COVID case, for 3 weeks running? Those are the basic analysis that we should have been working on. And that's why, now some of us believe that what we are having are just a continuation of the epidemic that we had, and that the so-called lower numbers we're getting was a false lower number associated with not testing enough, not enough kits in the laboratory. But whether we like it or not, you can call this a second wave because we're seeing the evidence. I mean, you're getting 90 cases before, and now you're getting 1,000 or something. Obviously, you have the second wave. But because we did not, I was told that PTF was almost going to be disbanded at the end on the December 31st because of the pretense of low figures we're getting. Before you remember the president now said their life have been extended until March 31st. You don't begin to stop this kind of committee when an epidemic is raging on, when you are not controlling the way it should be controlled, when your people are not abiding by the guidelines you are talking. I made one point that one of the errors that we made was that not making it important to our people that in this COVID problem, it is the people that are more important than the government. I used to say one thing, COVID is not going to kill our government. COVID is going to kill that individual person who gets sick. And you may be the only breadwinner in your house. So you become more important than even the chairman of the PTF. And if we have put that emphasis from the beginning, and you saw the way there was so much incoherence within our government. One state government will do one thing today, another will say another one tomorrow. You had Kogi, I saw it on your TV, Kogi saying they have no cases in their place. That's the incoherence we're talking about. And that there was no one voice from our government. And so it might see on December 31st, suddenly the Oyo state government removed the curfew so that Christians can go and do crossover, whatever. I was joking to them. I said they're going to cross over into COVID. You do that one. Why will you suddenly, have changed the curfew just because you want to please Christians? And like I was telling some of those Christians, is your God not omnipotent? Is not God not omnipresent? Is he not everywhere? Why must you congregate and put a noose of COVID news around your neck because you want to go to what do you call it, cross night world service? But that's by the way. Now you raise the question: is the waves a continuation of something? The what do you call it? The mutants or whatever.
The mutation. The mutation.
First of all, you and I don't even know what mutation we have in Nigeria. Why am I saying that? The result we got, which came from the lab in Ede, came from sample collected in August, and the second one in October. These two samples were from where? They're from Osun State. It does not represent Nigeria. So you and I do not know today what variants we have in the country, except for those ones they reported. I know now after we raised some hue and cry, I know that the ASEGI in Nigeria and whatever, and NCDC are now working together to see how we can get samples from different parts of Nigeria. But the two cases they found in Osun is not a reflection of what is happening in Nigeria. So right now, you and I cannot say anything about what is happening. What is it due to? A change in the mutation, or is it because we are reaping the harvest of lack of compliance with this thing that we're seeing? And that break, which I said between August and November, could actually be a false break because we're not testing. So this is the problem when you don't do things properly. You cannot explain your problem. And if you don't have an explanation, you don't know what steps to take. Is it because we're not testing that we're not getting those cases? That would have been a different approach to what we need to do. Is it because the things are going down or is truly going down? We don't know. So then you know what plan to make. When suddenly my government decided that they're going to close all the isolation wards and all that one, and then suddenly now it's, all of you come back. Let's see what I do. Lagos has to move to home-based treatment because they're going to over with this upsurge. A country will have been prepared for all that. In my part of Nigeria, we say if you don't have a mother or a father, you avoid getting a sore at your back because there's nobody who's going to take care of you. Our health system has no father, has no mother. So Nigeria must be proactive in doing things. One other example, just to be telling you some of the problems we have. You remember when we said people should be, when travelers were coming to Nigeria, we had the discussion about, should we take the samples when they are coming in? Or do we do what they are doing now? Some of us felt the best thing is to take those samples. Of course, there are pros and cons. But what happened? Week 42 to week 49, we had about 56,000 people coming to this country. As of week 49, we had only tested 7,000 of them. There were 80% of those people, out there who had not been tested. And of course, you can't blame them. Because when you come into Nigeria and you say, arrive in Abuja, and I go to my village, which is my town, maybe it's in Elisha. There's no lab in Elisha. The only lab, maybe if I'm lucky, is at Osogbo, or if you don't have that kind of, it's in Lagos. And you tell me 7 days, come back to come and test. How am I going to do that? If you are collecting my sample, listen, yes, we will miss some, but we're not going to miss 80% that we're missing now. What is my solution of my government? My government now says we are going to seize the people's passport. We'll put all their passports inside the name. I said, that's another fraud we're committing. If you put my passport A50502223, who knows who has it? I said, put the passport and put the name so we know who we're dealing with. And when they said they are seizing passport, which you know my country now, you and I know each other. It's only a temporary thing. Before we know somebody's going to bribe somebody to get another passport, isn't it? So when you know your people, you make your law according to the way your people behave.
So many people now seem to be convinced, part of why they would appear, let's just put it that way, that there's so much complacency, if you want to describe it as complacency, in the issue of caring about the protocols and enhancing prevention measures, is the fact that people say, well, I mean, January 2021 is here already. We are expecting the vaccines, and therefore all these hue and cry, the alarm is unnecessary. Since we are all soon going to be vaccinated, what's the issue? And already the government says it is looking for 400 billion to buy the necessary vaccines to be able to vaccinate Nigerians against COVID. The arguments have gone on even about the whole issue of should we subject the vaccines, what type of vaccines should we buy, first of all? Do we subject the vaccines to clinical trials here before we apply them on Nigerians? How do we administer the vaccines? How do we procure them? Which, where do we store them? And so what do you make of all of this?
My brother, let me start with the most important one about vaccine is not the solution to the problem. Let me also say why I'm saying that. If you get a vaccine, you develop immunity, no doubt. I mean, if you're lucky and if you do well, likelihood is that you will develop immunity because the rate is about 95% or whatever it is. But then that vaccination and that immunity does not stop you, protect you from exposure. It does not protect you from infection. What the vaccination does is prevent your infection becoming disease. I think you see the 3 steps I'm talking about.
Yes.
There is exposure. Your vaccine is not going to protect you from exposure. If you don't wear your mask and you go out because you are vaccinated, doesn't mean you won't be exposed to somebody who is sneezing and carrying things around. That's number 1. Number 2, it guarantees that you are protected, but suppose you are not. Even when you are protected, if you get exposed to the virus will grow in your body. That's the infection. But it will not progress to disease because you have the vaccine. So vaccine is not the solution. It's just an addition to the things we've said we should be doing. Wear your mask, wash your hand, maintain distance. Even when the vaccination comes, you still need to continue to do those ones because of the reason I've given. Your vaccine will prevent your infection from becoming a disease. That's all it does. So let's not think that this is a magic one that once I get it, that's the end. It's not. I'm never sure. I mean, we react differently. The fact that I get a vaccine doesn't mean I will develop immunity. It's human. There are various variations. So if I get to that, that's why you never get 100% seroconversion as you find. You always find some people who will not. Suppose you are one of those who will you go and expose yourself to the infection by getting exposed and not wearing your face mask? So let me stress that again. The vaccine will prevent your infection from becoming a disease. And if you get the disease, you may die. So if you don't get it, then of course you're okay. But then it does not stop you from getting infected. That's number 1. Now, I hear the federal government has put 400 billion to buy vaccine. They don't even know which vaccine they are buying. So how many doses do they know they're going to get? Are you getting what I'm saying? If Pfizer has its own different price, Moderna has its own different price, the Russian Malaya, whatever, has its own different price. On what are they basing their 400 billion when you don't know which vaccine you're going to get? And then you don't know how many doses you have because it is the price of the vaccine that will determine the dose you get with the 400 billion. So that's number 1. These are some of the areas where I said we have a problem with planning in this country. So that's number 1. Now, you remember there are different kinds of vaccines. Some you have to score at minus 70 degrees centigrade. Some at 20 or room temperature and all those kind of things. Which one are we getting? Are we getting the one that has of course, let's forget about the minus 70. Ordinary fridge you can't keep in the country. So don't even dream of getting minus 70. So I think for me, Pfizer vaccine is out of the way for our country. So we can look at the other ones, Oxford, the Oxford thing, some of the one from China and the one from Russia. Maybe this is the area we go. But today, none of us knows where we're getting. We're in the COVAX group. And what did they tell you? They're having a non-binding agreement. What does that mean? It's ridiculous. But anyway, that's a certain way. Now, by now, Nigeria should have been putting a question and answer those questions and answer you're talking about on the radio, on the TV. This is the type of vaccine, but because we don't know, but this is the type of vaccine we're going to get. This is the group they're going to get it. Yeah, we are planning. I know the MPACDA, others have been on the planning, but it's not the planning. It's the people you are going to give. It's not MPACDA. Therefore, the people should know now if we're actually going to get those vaccines. January is here already, Abi. They told us January. We're going to get those vaccines January. People should have known by now that we're likely to get it from this spot. This is the kind of vaccine you're going to get. These are the kind of reactions you get from that vaccine. This is what happens. That information should be made available. The information we are getting on the social media is all the contrary information about vaccines. And that's what the people hear, and that's what they believe. So where's the success? You're talking of vaccinating 50% of people. Suppose they refuse to come for vaccination. Are you going to read the 50%? That is where it is important for us now to get all that to be fed to the MPACDA. In the last 1 week, we've been working on question and answer and trying to get people we can hopefully broadcast. And I hope they will make it a good broadcast.
Prof, you are one of the country's foremost epidemiologists, and earlier in your career, you did extensive research into some other ailments which were serious problems on the African continent and in Nigeria as well. Things like Ebola, which you mentioned earlier, polio, hemorrhagic fever, yellow fever, Lassa fever. And these are things that still continue to kill people both on the continent and within Nigeria, even as we continue to battle the new one, which is COVID-19. Do you think that those ailments are being left behind by the focus, the attention, which seems to have been placed on COVID, possibly at their expense?
Yeah, I mean, you are saying the obvious. And we know that, first of all, with this COVID, a lot of people are not going to the hospitals again because they're afraid that they will get COVID in the hospital. I mean, health workers are getting COVID, so, why should I go there? That's number one. The resources we have been focused on COVID. It's not even enough for what we're doing. Therefore, I mean, a lot of other things are suffering. We know that. And we probably won't note all these ones maybe until this year, now in January, February, when we do an analysis of the number of deaths and things of that nature. Let me go back to some of the issues you raised, Lassa fever and some of them. If you check our data for Lassa fever, in the last 3 or 4 years, the numbers have been doubling. I mean, not doubling, sorry. The numbers have been increasing. We had 800 1 year, the following year to be 1,200, the next year. So from 2018, 2019, the number of Lassa fever cases have been increasing. But sometimes we always spin a positive side to failure. And what is that? They say, the awareness has increased, and that's why more people are reporting Lassa fever. But I'll just tell some of our colleagues, the NCDC and those places were set up, they're called Center for Prevention and Control, not Center for announcing increasing cases of number of cases. Your job is to prevent. Your job is to control. So if your numbers are increasing from year to year, then you are failing. And that's the thing I think we need to begin to assess ourselves as scientists. All of them. Why am I here? You call me a prevention and control center. And all I do to you every year is to let you the number of some cases that are increasing in the country. It means I'm failing. I think when we begin to think along those lines, in the way we look at our situation. Lassa fever came in Nigeria when, 1969. We celebrated the 50th anniversary in 2019. And we even thought that was the worst year. But 2018, 2019, all those things were worse than the following years. And then suddenly Lassa fever becomes our Christmas disease. And we pretend and say, Lassa has come again. But it's been coming for the last 50 years. It shouldn't surprise us now. In a country that has its own problem, will have made the proper preparation for all those things. We know October, November, thereabout, this Lassa fever comes. Guess what are these things? By awareness should have started since June or sometime, so that people will know what are the things that cause Lassa. Be on their lookout. Make sure you don't get your report on time. All those kind of information should be something we should be made aware to our people, because you have the figures, you have the epidemiology, and you can use those information to plan your group. Yellow fever, it's same story. First of all, we started. This was a country that had yellow fever vaccine lab that was producing vaccine lab. We were vaccinating our people, and then suddenly the decadence that came in the country destroyed all those things. And now we became a country that is had to import yellow fever from Senegal, that kind of thing. And then the laboratory system we had, Ibadan, between 1969 up to about 80, we were a WHO reference center for yellow fever diagnosis. We lost that one because we couldn't sustain this thing. Now we have to send our samples to Dakar to test. But yet we have the resources in the country individually, if we only make use of it. But then we depend so much on international body that whatever rule they give to us, even if you don't know they are stupid, we have to abide because we are beggars. We have the resources, we have the people. You mentioned center, maybe the center at Ede. In 2019, they did diagnosis of yellow fever without going to Dakar. Why would a country not take advantage of that and say, from now on, I'm going to do my diagnosis? Why should we be tied to the apron string of WHO to say, we are going to now send things to Dakar? And when you try to tell our people, they start arguing with you. These are things that, even we ourselves as individuals, I think this dependent mentality has robbed us of our sense, of our thinking. And that's where we are. We remain dependent on it until mentally, we change our attitude. There are enough talents in this country, enough people in this country to do what we need. We have all it takes in Nigeria to do what we want to do if we only take what we have. We have enough resources if we only have our priorities right. Was it not the same? I keep telling people, whatever I am by the grace of God was not because of anything. I never left this country. The environment was good. That was put me where I keep telling people, the son of a hugely polygamous man who had no dream of ever going to school. I would have introduced pre-primary education compulsory. I entered this primary school in my village. I went to Delta for my secondary education on free education. I went to ABU for my free education at university, all free. That was the country that made me, and I'm always very proud of that. And that was, if you see me with passion for my country, it's because I know we are capable. And I keep saying one thing, the generation that is after us, they are smarter than our own. All we need to do is to give them that literary environment, and you will see how they will excel far above us. A lot of people go out to the diaspora, or they say they leave the country and go out to the diaspora, and they say they excel. Why won't they excel? It's the environment, it's not the people. It is the talent. The talents are there. You give them the right environment, they will excel. Nigeria was once a diaspora for people, wasn't it? We had Ghanaians, Indians all coming to Nigeria. What happened to us? We can still be that diaspora for our people and for others if we get our priorities right. If our government will look back all these 60 years, where have we gone wrong? What do we need to do? And if we have that creative thinking, that I'm a very proud Nigerian, and I think I feel insulted when I go outside and I hear some things they're saying about Nigeria. Because I know I'm better than that. I know I'm capable of what they're telling me. Because I know this is the same country that made me what I am, that gives me the confidence to do that. So when we talk to our people, and then we as a country, I think we have a major problem. Truth is not one of the assets we have. We like praising and telling lies, praising our leaders and saying they're doing, we know they're all messing up.
Prof, I'm happy you mentioned what you mentioned, and because of that, I want to take you back to the basics, because you just now talked about your background and the fact that your education was completely here, and yet you rose to the top of your profession, which brings me to the issue of education generally, but in particular, the type of education that is sought after world over now. You were president of the Nigerian Academy of Science for a decade. After which you went on to be a university administrator as vice chancellor. So you've seen it both from, let's say, the practical and theoretical side. Where should we go now? ASU has just called off an almost 1 year long strike, which has kept most tertiary institutions closed. Where do you think we should go now, especially given everything you've said so far about the need for us to get the basics right? Where do we need to go in terms of the educational system?
Let me thank you very much for asking that question. My generation, whether we like it or not, had what you call home training. Education begins at the home, not at the university. Education begins the day you were born in your home, and they tell you true things about integrity, about hard work, about all those things. We lost all that. Unfortunately, some of my own generation too, are responsible for that. We became more modern, and then decided, oh no, what I did, it was suffering. I don't want my children to suffer. Therefore, you don't train them properly. They were actually guiding you. We lost all that. These are some. So we need to go back to basics. I like the word basic. The basic is not the university. It's not the secondary school. It's not even the primary school. The basic is the home. Once you start that and you tell your people from there, the same people will go on, and the teachers who also have that kind of training will continue that thing along the line. And there are a lot of my teachers today I'm very, very proud of. Anyway, I see Professor Banjo, who taught me English in secondary school. I remember how he disciplined us. Without that discipline, I won't be where I am today. But am I doing the same for the children under me? Maybe, I mean, I can talk for myself. Somebody was just telling me a few days ago that the students thought I was one of the hardest teachers, That wasn't hard. I was just saying, do this thing right. But how many of our teachers do that? It may not be their fault because they didn't have the training they needed from home. So if you don't have it, you can't give it. So we need to go back to the basics, to the home. Me as your parent, every other person, we need to train our children, where we're going. And they made it, I remember when I was growing up, if a policeman in uniform came to anybody's house in my village, we will, until we know what the person, the assumption is that he's a thief or police are coming to look for him. You don't want policeman coming to your house. If anybody steals, the entire family is involved. Today, ministers, everybody, they steal, and what do we do to them? We make them chiefs in our town. What message are we passing to our people? It is okay to steal, and you can only become famous when you steal. So those are the things, basic things that we need to look at. I mean, you can't take the university education out of the system. The system determines what the other components are. If our leaders are stealing money, of course, the leader at the gate, who is the gate man, will steal money. And then the stealing goes down all the way down. I hear some people say, we, the people, have made our leaders what they are. If our leaders create enough jobs and all those things, nobody will come and depend on them to come and get money for their school fees. If there's job everywhere, you have job to do, you created the environment for people to use their talent. They won't come to you when you come to the constituency to come and beg money for something. But they like that situation because they think it puts them in the position they like. And therefore, I mean, just like maybe I'm treading on dangerous ground. When I was growing up, some of the states in the north, we say they are educationally backward. I was telling one of my colleagues, I said, if 60 years after independence, they still say my state is educationally, I should be ashamed. And what I mean by that, there should have been a time limit to this educational backward thing and federal character thing. How can you say for forever and ever, I'm going to be educational backward? You give people a time limit. In 25 years' time, catch up. And if that had been there, people won't be having a problem about the north or the south now. These are some of the areas. There must be a standard. And once you have that standard, everybody should go along with it. Now, back to our university, it's unfortunate. I mean, when I was in school, when we started the different universities and things that we have in the country, Ibadan was probably one of the only Plazusuka at independence. Many of these universities had grants from outside. Rockefeller, Ford Foundation, Carnegie, that was what sustained them. But these grants were for 10 years. After they finished, we did not prepare enough to take over those grants. The decadence of our university started from there because we did not plan for the future. So if my generation was lucky because there was Rockefeller Foundation, like the institute where I work in Ibadan was a Rockefeller Foundation center till I finished. By the time I became mayor of the department and the money was, I had to scrounge for research grants because the country did not plan ahead. We don't plan in the future. And like the other day, I was telling a group of people, I said, Nigeria will try to find a solution to yesterday's problem tomorrow. Other countries will begin to anticipate tomorrow's problem and try and solve it yesterday or find a solution to yesterday. We reverse our own. It's tomorrow we decide, okay, how do we find a solution to yesterday's problem? We need a change of orientation. It's not that we should be talking about schools are not working, this and that. And then, like I keep saying, you do not take education, you do not take trade or any other thing out of the common thing of the environment. We need to create the enabling environment for our talents to function. Education, the trader, and all those other things. That environment is crucial. And you can be the most talented. If you bring the best carpenter in the world and you bring him into your house, he has no hammer, he has no nail, he has no saw. He's as useless as my grandmother. That's what happens with the environment. And those are the things, provide the resources and the environment for people to function. The other day I was listening to Honorable Dabiri, I think, who is in charge of diaspora. She made a statement, and I think I'll get a chance to. He said, well, if the war will happen, if the situation was improved, what will have happened in the country if the diaspora people are functioning well? And she said, it is for the future to decide. I said, no. It is not for the future to decide whether we want to improve our life. It is for us to decide that, maybe I got her wrong, but it was like, we cannot tell the future will decide. I said, no, the future will not decide on what is today. We should have decided on that yesterday, not wait for the future to decide.
Prof, my final question to you will be about the African continent, because as you said, many of these things don't happen in a vacuum. In your capacity as WHO regional representative for a decade, I believe, up until 2004, you helped set up the African laboratory network in very many countries across Africa. But yet, all these many years down the line, when we come across crises like COVID, like Ebola, and so on, most of Africa is caught unprepared, shall we say. Is this also a function of, some would say DNA, others would say the environment is not friendly? But is it also a function, given your own experience, not just of Nigeria now, of what goes on in those countries in terms of how people relate to their health?
When we started that, one of the things we did, that we had a criteria before we started. We did not create criteria along the line. We set up the criteria and said, if you are going to be a polio lab, you must have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I had a lot of battles with countries, with ministers of health or something, who wanted their countries to have a polio lab. And I said, oh, sir, you did not meet the standard. Therefore, you cannot get a lab. In fact, even up to the level of my big bosses, I mean, we know all these are political things. The head of the director of WHO visits a country, and the country says, oh, I want a polio lab. He comes back to base and says, Tomori, go and set up a polio lab in this country. I said, no, sir, I can't set up polio lab in that country because they have not met their criteria. In any case, we had the number of labs we wanted to set up, so we can't create that number now. It takes courage in your conviction in what you believe in, setting up criteria and standards for all of us to abide with it. Now, continuity is another problem. I don't know who came after me. I mean, I know him. We're lucky in the polio lab network. I had a chance to suggest who should come after me. And we have maintained that system. But we can't say that for other polio lab network because, who you choose to run the thing as part of the problem we have in the country.
Professor Tomori, it's been an enlightening time speaking with you and tapping from the fountain of vast experience that you've had in this interview. Thank you so much for your time, and do have a happy, better contenting 2021.
Thank you, my friend. I wish you better than you're wishing me, because I want you to progress faster than I did. And you will do so in Jesus' name.
Amen, sir. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, sir.
That's Newsnight. Thanks for watching. Do let us know what you think via the various handles on your screen. I'm Ladi Akiri Doluale.